Today we're going to talk about an interesting topic, at least for me. It's talking about how can you know if your woman is a good woman and somebody you want to keep as a lifetime partner. You could be married or you could be living together for a life. But how do you know if you're going to make it together as a team, as a couple? And I'm going to play a few clips from Reekay, who's a legend in the blogger community. He's been around blogging for probably 10 years or something now. And he has a few words to say, and I don't agree with what he's suggesting. He's suggesting to basically find a woman that's old-fashioned, 1940, 1950 type attitude, and cooking and cleaning and taking care of the man as a top priority. And all your problems will be solved. And he's explaining, and you can listen to the rest of his video. I'm just going to play a short clip on the beginning of his video, but I'm going to cut it short because I have a few things to say, and you can go to his link and listen to the whole video yourself. But I'm going to chime in and I'm going to explain how you can actually, and you don't need to follow like a 1950 type strategy or model for man and woman living their life together. I'm going to propose an alternative model, and I'm actually excited to do this because I don't talk too much about this to other expats, but today I'm going to actually open up a bit about my personal life and my experience, and I'm going to get into what actually might be a solution other than the finding a woman that fits the 1950 type model for a couple. So let's dive in here and see what Reekay says.
I arrived in the Philippines in 2012, and for 7 years, until I met who is now my wife, for 7 years, I dated a wide variety of women. I dated women in their 20s, 30s, and even late 40s, 3 of them who were, at least they said, 49. I dated Filipinas from the province, from the city, from just outside the city, those who had jobs, those who did not. I dated women with kids, women without kids, women who had worked as OFW, women who had not. And after several years, what I found myself passing on to newer expats is this realization about Filipinas in the Philippines.
Today we are going to cover an interesting topic, at least it is for me. It's a little different than my previous videos, and let me give you a little background on myself, how this came about. I started off my life as an engineer. I was very much into science, mathematical formulas. Everything could be calculated. The stress on the I-frames on a bridge could be calculated on based on how many cars. The resistors in an electric circuit could be easily calculated, and you could predict how much current would flow through the wires and predict if the wires are going to burn up, etc. So the world of Nils as a young man or as a college graduate was very, very logical, very mathematical. Everything was predictable. Life in the universe was just a big mathematical formula. So, cut a long story short, I graduated college, started traveling around the world, and quickly found out that I didn't know everything about the world. And human nature was very complicated, at least in my mind at that time. Now I think differently, but at that time I was looking for some answers to how to predict human relationships, especially love relationships, but even business relationships or relationships with friends and coworkers. I sometimes scratched my head, didn't understand. And I am going to reveal today not a formula, but kind of like an axiom that I follow to try to make sense out of people's behavior. And also, I can use the same tool for predicting the longevity of people's relationship or how well they're going to get along. But before we dive into the tool I'm using or the tools I'm suggesting to use, we're going to hear from Reekay in his recent video about how he thinks selecting a woman that follows the 1950s model of a relationship and how that guarantees success in love and romance. I disagree with his statement on that, but and I'm going to tell you why and what the alternative solution is to predicting a good relationship or finding a good woman for a relationship. But let's first hear some personal stories from Reekay.
And it's this: the good ones are really good and the bad ones are really bad. Today, I want to talk about the good ones. Now, another thing I found myself sharing with guys when I would go back once a year to the United States to visit family for the holidays, I would meet up with various friends that I knew from my previous workplace and share with them what a lot of these good Filipino women are like. And what I told them was, it's like going back in time. It's like the way, and again, we're talking about the good ones. I said it's like the way that women were back in the mid 1940s and early 1950s, with good traditional values, a solid grasp on what their gender is, and the different roles that the man and the woman play in that relationship. Very traditional. The man is leading the house. He is getting her input, but he is making the final decisions, and he's also taking on the responsibilities to fix things if his decision is wrong.
Yeah, that's where me and Enrique diverge on the model to follow for a couple and the romantic relationship and what is the best way to deal with life as a romantic couple. Uh, yeah, there's no argument that the 1950s model worked well in the 1950s. I saw that with my own parents, and yeah, that was pretty much how people thought about life and romantic relationships in the 50s, as he describes. But I don't think it will work in the current times, and this is and I'll explain why I think it won't work. And the reason is you can find some girls in the Philippines that are traditional, that are following the 1950s model for how to structure a relationship. But not everybody agrees with that. And a lot of the new girls, the modern girls, especially the ones in the big cities who were brought up to a more independent life, they will not agree to stay at home and cook and clean and be a maid for the husband, basically. And some guys, they don't want a maid. They don't want a woman that runs after them and asks what they can do for the man. Some guys want to be more equal, and you can call it gender equality or whatever, but we don't have to open that can of worms. I just want to tell you there is an alternative model that I've been trying to follow that allows for the woman to not be cooking and cleaning and traditional lifestyle, and to be more independent, to be participant in the business, to be a participant in other things outside the house. And I think it's more healthy and more growth oriented for both parties. We are souls after all, even though we are different genders. We still are participating in life as a way to learn from life. And if we're just limited to a small box, I believe we're not unleashing our full potential. And the same thing with the 1950s model. that might work well for what we had in the 1950s, but it's not going to work very well for the modern age where people are more independent and they have more choices, and there's lots of opportunity and choices in all different areas of life. I think it's much more important to get down to the underlying theme or the basis of why the 1950 model worked and find those underlying axioms and follow those axioms or those fundamental truths rather than some rules that was put in an economics book back in high school in the 1950s. And we'll get into what the axioms are for understanding why the 1950 model worked for relationships. But basically, it comes down to understanding human nature. And I can tell you a little bit about how I was brought up and as an engineer. When I went to engineering school, we could calculate the stress of an I-beam on a bridge, and if there was 10 cars on the bridge, we can measure the weight, etc., at every point along the I-beam. I remember we calculated the resistor value for preventing the current in an electrical wire to get too high so it would burn up, so it wouldn't burn up the wire. And everything in the world had a formula, at least that's what I used to think when I graduated from college and I finished engineering school. By the way, I was in the top of my class, feeling very proud about that in my senior project. But the downside of that was I was very, very one-track minded on how the world was just based on a formula for everything. And when I finished college, I realized there was more to life than a mathematical formula. And what I didn't understand, I quickly discovered this, was human nature and love relationship that made no sense to me. You know, why do some people get along well, and why do some couples argue and break up, and why does a short girl and a tall guy get along so well even though they're physically incompatible? You know, just tons of questions about life in general. Why, so to speak. So I became very, what's the word? I wanted to research everything. I started traveling around the world. I researched different philosophies, different religions actually, and got really deep into the human nature of things and totally switched off the mathematical view of everything. So I discovered through some trial and error that there was an underlying theme to the success of this 1950s model of having a successful marriage or a successful relationship. And basically, I discovered that there is a life force in every human being, but there's different amounts of life force in every human being. Some human beings have a lot of life force, and some other beings, human beings, they have a very little amount of life force. And this is reflected in something called the degree of affinity and common reality and the level of communication a human being has in all aspects of life. You can pretty much look at a human being and tell where he's at in terms of his life force, where he's at on his life energy, based upon his reactions or his handling of different aspects of life. It doesn't even have to be about love and romance. It could be about his attitude towards children. It could be his attitude towards honesty. It could be his attitude towards medical health. It could be his attitude towards integrity. It could be his attitude towards... there's a whole range of things that I discovered that you can basically sort of rate a human being that you run into, including a potential girlfriend. You don't even have to ask her what school she went to or what kind of family she came from. You can basically pull out a list of questions or a list of areas to look at about her and know pretty much accurately if she's going to be a good partner, a good wife, or a good girlfriend. And I find it to be a very useful tool, and I'm going to give some examples from my own life here with my own girlfriend. I have a very pretty young girlfriend, but we did have some difficulties in the beginning, and we used to break up at least once a month, I think, something like that. And but we did have a high amount of life force, both of us, in the area of affinity. And the 3 points I mentioned, affinity, reality, and communication, they kind of go together like a triangle. If you raise 1 point, for example, affinity, if you have high affinity, the other two will usually follow right along. The communication will rise, and the common reality will rise. So we were lucky in that we didn't have, in other words, we had 1 point that was strong, and the other points were kind of following along, tagging along, catching up, and we kind of made it through, but it was difficult. And let's see if I can give some examples of what the life force will do to people on different levels. Yeah, for example, when it comes to the medical range, if you're high on the life force scale, the person will be very resistant to common infections. If they're lower on the scale, they will be occasionally ill. Even lower on the scale, they'll be endocrine and neurological illnesses. And very low on the scale, almost close to death, they'll be chronically ill. And regarding affinity, they will be high on the scale. They will have a high level of love and outgoing affinity. They will be friendly. Lower on the scale, they'll be more withdrawn. They will neglect other people. Even lower on the scale, they will be antagonistic. They will express resentment. They will even lower, get into hate, violence. And even worse, actually, is they will, even lower on the scale, they'll start to become covertly hostile, which I'm sure you know what that means. And even lower from that, there'll be withdrawal from other people and low interest in life. And for example, hearing and vision, when a person is high on the scale, he will have clear sonic perception. High on the scale, he'll have clear vision. Lower on the scale, he'll have problems with dub-ins. He'll hear things. He'll hear things that are not real. He'll see things that are not real. He'll have trouble recalling things. He'll have trouble remembering things. When it comes to speech and talking, the person will be able to talk swiftly and clearly and strongly and fully exchange their beliefs and ideas. Lower on the scale, they'll be talking pointlessly, and even lower on the scale, they will talk about death and destruction. Even lower on the scale, they'll be talking about vicious things. Even lower on the scale, they'll talk very little or does not talk at all. And when it comes to common reality, they'll be able to search and discover different viewpoints. It doesn't mean they always, the people high on the scale, they're always in agreement. And they can also easily change their reality or agreement about things. Lower on the scale, the people with on the aspect of reality, they will refuse to match two realities. They will get into conflict. They will verbally doubt things. They will get defensive even on their own reality. They will, even lower on the scale, they'll try to attempt to undermine others. They will disagree with others. And they will, lower on the scale, they'll start to get into destruction of opposing realities. You are wrong, etc., and disagrees with reality of others. An example of that will be, bloggers and haters online. There's some of that, and you basically want to avoid those people. You don't want those people as girlfriend or even male friends. You can, using this chart of or this scale of emotional life force, you can basically sum up everybody you meet very quickly. In fact, I got so good at it that I could pretty much tell within 30 seconds after meeting a new person where they're at on this scale and what they would be like as a friend or like a potential partner if it was a girl. I could pretty much sum them up within 30 seconds or a minute. I didn't have to have a long discussion about what school they went to, what family they're from, etc., etc. It became almost fun to live life and try this tool on everybody, or try this attitude on everybody I met, and it worked so well that I became, my whole life changed as a result of it, and I've been through quite a few relationships now, but this has saved me a number of incidents and drama situations pretty early on in the relationship, and there's no difference in the Philippines or any country or any culture. The life force in a person can be measured specifically by looking at what they do for these, how they react to these different aspects of life. And take another aspect here, which is, for example, handling of truth. People that are high on the life force scale, they will be able to handle and communicate with high concepts of truth. They will be truthful in everything they say. Lower on the scale, they'll start to be cautious and have some social life. Even lower on the scale, they'll be insincere, and they'll be careless of facts. You know how some people, they're just like telling white lies all the time. That's a very, very downscale kind of communication. So be careful with people that are insincere or careless of facts. People that are high on the scale, they're very careful about communicating the truth at all times. And even lower on the scale, the truth is twisted, and it's usually to suit antagonism. And even lower on the scale, they are blatantly destructing their communication by lying. Even lower on the scale, they will be ingenious and vicious perversion of truth, covers lying artfully. It just goes down and down once you go lower and lower on the scale, and towards the bottom of the scale, they have no concept of reality at all. And when it comes to children and sexual behavior, high on the scale, it means you have high sexual interest. High interest in children doesn't mean you want to procreate and have lots of children. It just means you love children, you love to hang around with children. And when lower on the scale, you get less interest in children, you tolerate them less, and lower on the scale, you'll be disgusted at sex. You'll be, even lower on the scale, you'll be interested in rape. You use sex as punishment. Even lower on the scale, you're brutal for treating children. It's we could talk about this for hours. I just love this topic, and it fits in so well with what Reekay was talking about on how to find your perfect partner for a marriage or girlfriend. You really don't need to follow the 1950s model and assign rules for the gender, etc., etc. You basically could throw all that stuff out the window, and you just follow some basic axioms on try to determine the amount of life energy the person has in their body. And like I started talking about here, there are many aspects you can use to judge where they're at on this scale. It's not an on-off situation. It's a graduated scale from the top being fully alive, full life force in the body, down to close to death, where you're in apathy and your medical condition is poor. It has all the levels in between, and you can easily tell that by looking at a person or talking to the person for a few seconds, and you can basically sum them up very quickly, and if you want them as a friend, if you want them as a girlfriend, and you don't need to get into the this business about do you follow the 1950s house and husband and wife model from the 1950s. You don't need. This is my take on Reekay's 1950s model. It's just outdated, and it's not even getting to the basic underlying axioms, which I think are more important. Let's see what else he has to say here towards the end.
Now, as I said, there are some women in the United States who can provide this sort of role on their part as a wife, who can prioritize the man in their life as the leader, the decision maker, the person of responsibility, and they are the support system. They are there to take care of as much of the daily tasks as possible so that he is free to focus and relax on the tasks that he is expected to fulfill. There are some women in the United States that still do this. The problem is there are not very many of them. Whereas in the Philippines, don't make the mistake of thinking that every Filipina in the Philippines is like this because some vlogger told you so. As I began in the beginning, the good ones are really good and the bad ones are really bad. Not every Filipina is what I just described, but the ones that are in much higher numbers than what you're probably used to finding in your own home Western country. If you take the time to be patient, get to know the woman, spend 6 to 9 months. I took a year getting to know her, that she's just not on her best behavior the first 3 months. This is how she actually is. She values your place in the relationship as a man, and she fully embraces her role as a woman in the relationship. Take the time to establish that that's who she really is. And if you do that, if what you're looking for is a great relationship or a great wife, there's really no reason that you shouldn't be able to find that in the Philippines fairly easily compared to back home.
Yeah, this is a topic that's very close and dear to my heart. If you guys want to know more about this tool and how to place another human being on this life force chart or the scale, where they are on it, and using that as a tool to determine if the person is a suitable mate for you, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you.